Right. Thank you for joining the February 25th, 2020 VOLTA call. Just a reminder to everyone that the meetings are public and recorded, and we post them to YouTube after the meeting concludes. So please be mindful of that during discussions and presentations. We have two main topics on the agenda today. The first is a presentation from NTT on technology profile implementation for EPON support. And then second, there was a discussion request from David Bainbridge related to the possibility of archiving simulated OLT and ONU adapters. So after that, with any remaining time, we'll look at non-brigade related JIRAs that have opened up over the past week. And with that, I think we can go ahead and move to our first topic for today, so the tech profile implementation for EPON. I will stop sharing my screen, and then you should be able to share it on your side to start the presentation.
Okay, thank you. Can you see my screen?
The presentation. Yes,
okay.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, let me start. Hello, everyone. My name is Takahiro. I work for NTT and currently work at the ONFO office in Menlo Park. Today, I'm going to give you a presentation on tech profile implementation for EPON support. This is the contents I have already discussed with Sean and Saurabh. NTT's access system uses IEEE EPON, but current VOLTHA supports only IdeaTbone. Today, I'm going to talk about the contribution plan for EPON support. If it is acceptable, NTT would like to start a contribution for EPON support. This figure shows the current implementation of VOLTHA. KV Store has a tech profile for XGS-PON, which is a JSON file, and it is loaded into this read tech profile part. After that, PON resource manager corresponded the tech profile to PON resource ID, such as alloc ID and Genport ID. Finally, it makes tech profile instance and writes it to KV Store. The created tech profile instance is sent to OLT ONU adapter and is used for hardware setting. Regarding adapter, we are asking vendor to develop it. And today's focus is a contribution of tech profile implementation for EPON support. I'm going to develop it until March. And first, I need to make tech profile format and reference design for EPON. Second, I'm going to develop build function for EPON tech profile. Third, I'm going to develop a write function for EPON tech profile. Let me show you a detail of tech profile for EPON and the function to be developed in the following slide. This figure shows the correspondence between IdeaTbone and IEEE EPON. As you know, IdeaTbone defines a logical link called tcont and Genport. And QoS is set in the unit of Genport. IEEE EPON defines almost the same concept as this logical link, and they are composed of LLID and QIDs. QoS is set in the unit of Q. So I think if alloc ID is corresponded to LLID and Genport ID is corresponded to QID, we can use a common PON resource manager between IdeaTbone and IEEE EPON. The difference we should add to tech profile is that IEEE EPON has 3 kinds of subdivided specification for each country. There are package A for North America, and package B for Japan, package C for China. Next, to make we need some parameters to ensure safety from IEEE standard. IEEE standard specifies 4 traffic types for DBA. Constant bit rate, which has a fixed size frame and constant time interval. Real-time polling service, which has a variable size frame and polling interval. Non-real-time polling service, which is a polling service without throughput guarantees. And best effort service, which specifies only throughput and traffic priority. We need to add these parameters to EPON tech profile, except for values specified in bandwidth profile site. And these are the other parameters for QoS setting. The polisher and shaper need information rate, but it is also specified in bandwidth profile site. Queues needs a parameter of queue size and number of queue sets for TBA. Scheduler needs parameters of scheduling policy, priority, wait, discard policy. For DBA, it needs scheduling policy and queue threshold. Scheduling policy for DBA can be corresponded to normal scheduling policy, such as round robin and strict priority and weighted round robin. So if we write either, we can omit one scheduling policy. And this is a proposed EPON tech profile that summarizes mentioned parameters. Tech profile identifiers and common interface control can be used in the same way as that of IdeaTbone. The number of gem ports can be used as a number of queues by corresponding gem port ID to QID. Unlike IdeaTbone, the package type needs to be specified to select the specification. There are mentioned QoS parameters in upstream and downstream queue attributes. And P-bit map and AES encryption are also needed like ITT profile. And the structure of EPON profile is different with that of ITUT. So I need to make new functions for EPON tech profile. First, I'm going to show the current tech profile implementation. First, OpenOLT invokes get TP instance from KV store, and tech profile instance comes back from KV store. If there is no tech profile in KV store, new tech profile instance will be created. OpenOLT invokes create tech profile instance, which returns a tech profile instance, and tech profile.go starts to create tech profile instance. Tech profile.go pull tech profile from KV store, allocate TP instance allocates alloc ID and gem port, and tech profile.go creates the tech profile instance by corresponding the tech profile to resource ID. And finally, the tech profile instance is sent to KV store and OpenOLT side. And this is a current implementation. And we are going to make different function for EPON tech profile. The structure of tech profile is different with that of ITUT. So we are going to make the functions that return the EPON tech profile for each function. Regarding resource manager, we can use same function because we corresponded alloc ID to LLID. The functions we are going to make are written in techprofile.go, and it has no effect on OpenOLT unless the new function for EPON is used in OpenOLT. As a first step, before contributing adapter for EPON, I'm going to make these functions. Finally, let me show the contribution schedule of NTT. I'm going to contribute proposed EPON profile until VOLTHA 2.3 release. In parallel, we are asking vendor to develop EPON adapter using the proposed EPON profile. As other work, there is a plan of development of name function in second quarter and third quarter. Finally, we are going to make POC using developed tech profile and adapter in fourth quarter. If it is acceptable, I'd like to start a contribution. That's it for me. Does anybody have any questions?
Hi, this is David. I don't have eyes on my screen right now. What again are you going to do for the two? Is anything happening for the 2.3 release, or is this all post 2.3 release?
Sorry, two results.
Is this for VOLTHA 2.3?
VOLTHA 2.3, or is it going to be after the release?
There is some development before. Right.
I understand that VOLTHA 2.3 release is March, and before I'm going to contribute to this tech profile until the release of VOLTHA 2.3 release.
I guess my question really is, do we want any new code contributions, new feature contributions to 2.3 at this point, or do we need to find a way to push them off to the release after that? It's not necessarily a question for you, but it's a question for like Saurav and I don't know who else is on the call. But yeah, you know, we're trying to code freeze.
Right. So I think what he's basically creating is the equivalent of helper functions. They don't actually get called or activated unless the adapter is written to support EPON. That part is not happening in 2.3. I don't see a big deal about adding these functions in techprofile.go as something to be called in the future. Am I making sense?
New code is new code. Either we're in code freeze or we're not.
We're not in code freeze yet.
Okay, we're trying to get a stable release. This isn't where I'd say it's time to inject new code into the release, even if new feature code into a release, even if it's not going to be quote unquote used.
If it's not used, why do we even bother committing that? I mean, are we just going to use it for compiling?
Because it's still an open source project, right? So if somebody wants to contribute something outside of what has been determined by the search team, it's still okay.
No, it's not. Open source doesn't mean anybody can commit anytime they want, and it has to be accepted. This sounds like I'm not trying to
it has to pass tests. Agreed. All of those things are fine. It shouldn't break anything.
Okay.
But there's been code contributions in the past few months on features that have not been agreed on in the last, when the surge started.
Agreed. And not particularly happy about that either, but okay.
Yeah,
Again,
neither am I, but-
these are actions that lead to instability, not stability. That's all I'm going to say. Look, it's perfectly reasonable for an open source community to say, look, this is a good contribution, we like it, and this is a good addition, but from a timeline perspective, it has to happen and be committed after a certain milestone's released. It's perfectly reasonable for a community to set those guidelines. We haven't been very good about setting those in the past, as you just pointed out, but that doesn't mean we have to be continually to not do that as well, right? We have to find, I don't know, there's a balance here, and I'm not sure we found it.
I feel like the happy middle ground is sort of to not commit it, but keep it as a work in progress patch set. Because then we can still run tests on it. It can still pass everything. But we don't actually have to merge it into the code base until after 2.3.
But then it becomes a rebase nightmare for the individual too.
Are you going to rebase? Are you going to release from master, or when you do a code freeze, are you going to have a specific 2.3 branch?
Presumably at some point we'll cut a 2.3 RC branch, which is bug fix only branch, and then master is open for new feature development.
Yeah. Yeah, and that I would guess that would probably be in the near future, so that might be a good point to accept the new contributions.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm hinting at is can we set that deadline and then say, look, contribute to master after this deadline, after the release branch has been cut. And to be fair, you know, to the gentleman presenting, this actually has nothing to do with your presentation or the code you're committing, right? This is just project stuff.
From the slide that I'm seeing, it seems that there's also a dependency on C by 3.0, right? And for this feature to work.
For integration, they have to do the NAM integration. So yeah, they have to have somewhere in 3.0.
Yeah, then for sure this won't be part of the 2.3 release. So as long as we put a date by which we can start to submit code post 2.3, I think that's fine.
Yeah, I think that sounds reasonable. So I think the patches can come in to get it in a work in progress state. And after we cut our release candidate, then it should be okay.
Any additional questions on the NTT side for the discussion and comments?
Yes, this is Girish. So I had one question to Takahiro.
Yes.
So I saw that you're introducing new APIs like create EPON tech profile instance. So as much as possible, not introduce technology specific things into the API, and the tech profile module itself can decide what technology it is from the tech profile. So you could still use the same API, and the technology profile module could decide the technology based on the technology profile, because there is a field meant for it. So as much as possible, keep the OpenOLT adapter technology agnostic. Is that possible?
Yes. Yes. I'm going to implement like that, so that if we input the XGS-PON tech file, the implementation is done for XGS-PON, and if we input the IEEE PON, the the implementation becomes EPON. That is possible.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
I have a question. So is I think OpenOLT adapter has been mentioned. So is the OpenOLT adapter is going to be used for this EPON implementation also, or it's a separate different adapter?
Not yet, but I'm going to develop the OpenOLT side in the future. But
okay.
First, I'm going to develop on the tech profile part.
Okay. But okay. So still you're going to add this function, the EPON support on the OpenOLT adapter.
Yes.
Okay. I'll be interested to see that. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so thank you, Takahiro, for the presentation. Thank you, NTT, for your team joining on the call today as well. Let me go ahead and take the screen back. And then hopefully everyone is seeing the agenda again. David, I think I heard you are away from your screen at the moment, so you're probably not expecting to share material. The next topic we had was the discussion you requested on the possibility of archiving simulated OLT and ONU adapters. I think there was also some related discussion on Slack on the stabilization channel, but let me hand that over to you for the moment.
Sure. The simple question is, we have these two adapters, a simulated OLT and simulated ONU adapter that were built originally because we didn't have any real adapters yet for devices, and it's unclear how or if they're used today. And because we have the VBSIM, which through which most our simulated testing goes through anyway, and the OpenLT adapter. While these two adapters are examples of how you can write adapters, that's kind of where they are. The question is, do we want to remove support for these adapters from the code base, basically establish that these archives aren't going to be kept up to date as the APIs evolve between the core and the adapters. The other change I think we have to make is to the CLI, which defaults to the OpenOLT adapter when you add a device. If you don't specify it, we just have to remove that default. So that really is the question. Do we want to put these kind of in an inactive state and no longer promise to support them?
He probably didn't have a very good idea of what that
I would say we should. Originally, there was two sets of adapters. There was the simulated OLT ONU adapters, and then there was the on-sim adapters. The simulated OLT was more to allow for quick implementation, like really the interface between the core and the adapter, just to test the APIs and so on and so forth. But now we have like VBSIM is coming up to speed, so it has most of the features. So we can, with kind VOLTHA, we are able to do a lot of those kind of tests fairly quick. So I think like there's no really point of maintaining the OLT and ONU simulated adapters. Just like for PONSIM as well, I think we don't need to maintain PONSIM as well. Although there was some features in PONSIM that before, I think it was something around traffic that the VBSIM didn't have. Maybe VBSIM already have those right now. So definitely simulated OLT and ONU, we don't need to keep them. PONSIM, maybe also we should stop them.
So again, I don't know what the process is around this in order to move in a certain direction. Say we're going to end a life support for these projects, these two repos. I don't know how an official decision gets made.
Technically, well, we don't really have an abandoned repo. It'll still be hosted on Garrett. It's just people decide not to update it.
Do we, again, we talked about this in Slack. Is there a way to designate via perhaps a repo name change that it is EOL'd, so that when people are browsing the available repos, it's clear which ones are active and which ones aren't, without having to go through and say, hey, when was the last time it was updated? Because even the last update doesn't necessarily mean it's a supported repo.
There's a place to do a comment, but not not renaming the repo, because that there's some namespace issues in the way that Garrett works. So we could definitely add a comment on the repo that it's deprecated, and we could do that in GitHub and other places.
How about on the README?
Yeah, and README would be a good idea.
So do we need to have a vote? What's the best way to move forward?
Make a patch set to change the README, and when I see that, I'll change the comments in various places.
Okay.
I'm not hearing any disagreements. I think we're all good.
All right. Thank you very much then.
Okay. I think we're set on that one then, and then we'll get that patch set in, and Zach, it looks like you'll be able to handle things from that point on. We have one new topic added in that is to discuss, Kent wanted to have some time to discuss updates to the tool containers. So Kent, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to share, or if it's just a verbal discussion.
No, I don't have anything to share. Just
okay.
So I've been looking at updating the tool containers to bump the Go version and bump the linter version. The Go version we're on is only supported for about the next 6 months, so I'd like to bump that. And the linter has some issues with it on the current version we're on. That's stopping me from enabling linting on the VOLTHA repo. So that's my reason for wanting to update them. The process should be relatively smooth. Not all the repos have to be updated at once. Basically, new containers will be generated with the new tool versions. And then I'll just sort of update repos one at a time. There will be a little bit of code churn because the linters aren't exactly the same. There will be a few new cases that will change. That's pretty much it. That's what I'd like to do. And any questions and any problems with that?
So Kent, will this also change the parent Docker version that we're using to build the containers that are used in production?
So the parent containers, so the Docker build, the make build targets, you mean? Yeah,
because if we upgrade the Go version, don't we need that new Go version in the Docker containers used to build?
Yes, that will also need to be updated. Okay. So that's just another thing for me to keep track of as I'm doing it, but that's part of the change, yes.
Okay.
Can I ask a clarification on this one? If the Go version needs to be updated or any other package version needs to be updated, it doesn't have to be updated manually outside these containers, right? These containers should be full sufficient. Outside these packages. Is that the intent?
I'm sorry, there was a noise on the line.
I'm sorry, let me repeat it. When, I don't know who, but somebody asked the question about, is that, David, is that you? You asked the question on the updating the Go version. Any package versions should not be updated outside these tool containers that Kent is putting together.
Yes.
Everything has to be inside the tool container. If Go needs to be updated, it has to be inside this container, right?
So the versions of all the packages should be unrelated to this. There will be a small amount of churn in the vendor folder because the way the vendoring is done is slightly different, but it shouldn't break builds. And all of the dependencies that are versioned by GoMod, their versions are already pinned. So all we're updating really is the compiler. There's no actual changes to the code. Does that answer your question? Does that make sense?
Not necessarily. When we are running the build, all the tools necessary to running a build is going to be set up within this container. There won't be any external dependency on any other packages. Is that correct?
Yes. There's two different containers. The ones I'm talking about updating are just tools, but we're also going to have to update the build containers. So the tool containers are used if you're running one of the make targets. And the purpose of doing that was to pin the versions of our dependency so that a developer didn't have to have a specific version installed on their laptop. And so that's already been done. But now if we want to bump the version of Go, for example, we have to update those tool containers as well as the build containers. But yes, all of the dependencies are contained within
these two containers. Perfect. Yeah. Perfect.
Are you moving Go to 1.13 or that's irrelevant?
Yes, the plan is 1.13. 1.14 is supposed to be released in the next couple days or weeks, very soon. But we don't want to move to something unstable and new. And also, because it's sort of the end of the release cycle for 1.13, it should be very stable.
Oh, okay. And 1.13 is compatible with any of those other compilers that we have, right?
Yes.
Like for Protos and everything.
Go is backwards compatible, yes. And Protos is not, the Protos tool is not being updated. I didn't want to cause churn in the Protos repo. So that the Protos generation is exactly the same.
Yes. Okay, thanks.
My next question, when will you be rolling these things out, these changes?
Hopefully starting within the next few days, hopefully done within the next week or so.
So it's going to be included in 2.3?
Yes.
Okay. David, are you okay with this? Don't get me wrong, I really do like this.
Hey, no, I know it is. It does represent churn right towards the end of a release.
Right.
What's the business justification here?
The business justification, so basically we can't enable linting on VoltCuddle without bumping that version. The other thing is that the Go 1.12 that we are currently on is only supported for the next 6 months. So I would like to move to a version of Go that is supported for a longer time. That is the.
So the question, the question becomes: the release 2.3 is support for release 2.3 going to outlive support for Go?
I don't know what our support cycle is on.
Yeah, that's a call that we'll have to make at some point, because what the 2.3 was intended to be a long-term support version, but as it looks right now, we're going to miss out on a couple of features in 2.3. So I don't know. I mean, I was going to leave it till the Berlin discussion to decide if we want to continue labeling this as as an LTS version. So we'll have to make that call at some point. But as of now, we still intend to branch out to 2.3 like it was an LTS version. but my gut feel says that it's the next version that we will have all the features in. So for example, Deutsche Telekom's FTTB support, we won't get it in to 2.3. It's possible that in-band control will also drop out. Net, I don't think 2.3 is going to be what will be LTS.
Can you expand on we need the new version of Go for lint support, please?
Okay, so we don't actually need the new version of Go for lint. We need the new version of the linter for lint. The new version of the linter, though, uses the newer version of Go. I wanted them to be consistent. There's two separate updates here. One is the update to the linter, and one is the update to Go. The only real reason to push them through together is to avoid having two separate waves of changes through the repos.
What is gained with the new linter that we don't have in our existing linter?
So all sorts of minor improvements, but the key thing is that the current linter is broken on VoltCuddle.
Oh, is this the memory issue?
Yes, this is the memory issue.
I'll be honest, I'm more comfortable with changing versions of Go than new feature contributions that people write, because there's a trust level with stuff coming with the latest 13 release of Go.
Go has been very consistent, and I don't think we've ever had an issue updating Go. It's usually just bump the version number, run the new version, everything works as it has. I'm very confident with it.
Yeah, I agree with Kent. It seems like a pretty low risk bump, and you never know what the life cycle of your software is, and I'd rather do this now than wait until immediately after release to immediately bump Go versions, and then if we had backports of patches, because there might be some changes in syntax, it might make that difficult. So I'm in favor of doing this because I don't think it's going to be a big change, and I think it's going to be a positive change in terms of long-term maintainability and transitioning to the next version.
I guess I'm kind of okay with this. So I guess just submit the patch sets.
All right. Any other questions, comments?
Are there any dissent?
Comment from Scott here. Yes, Scott, we can update one at a time. I can even just use the new my updates locally, and I've been running through and testing them out. So that's how I have some idea of how the transition will go. All right. Excellent. Thank you. I think that's all for that discussion.
Okay. So I believe what I heard is that we are okay after some discussion of moving forward with including this in 2.3. And so Kent's going to start working on that in the background. Last call to make sure if there are any objections, that I capture them on the meeting. Any objections? Okay, I think we're set there. So Kent, thanks for bringing up that topic. Thanks everyone for the discussion. Next, we have just a handful of some non-brigade related JIRAs that came in. So let me switch over to that tab. And let me do a refresh also to see if anything new came in during the meeting. I don't see anything. I believe the first one I had flagged was 2635, sorry, 37. Let's see which one that one was. This one I think was a question I was not quite sure on. Yeah, this one, I don't think we have a brigade set up for the transparent VLAN support. I could be wrong, and I wasn't quite clear on the scope of the task, what it was specific, if it was specific to a certain area. Let me see who we've got on the bridge. Do we have anyone who can speak to this on the call? Anyone who's familiar with it?
It sounds like this story was a result of somebody making a comment on the patch, right?
Maybe. That could be. Okay. But the patches merge, so this may have been something flagged to open up. Okay, we may have to follow up offline. Wasn't quite sure what to do with this one. Okay. Thanks, Sarah. We'll
Actually, this is Amit.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry.
Yes?
I'll follow up with Humira and we'll get more details put in the Jira.
Okay,
it's not
great. Thank you, Amit.
Yeah. Yep.
And the next one was 2641. This one, I think as part of, we had a brigade active at one point for porting OpenOLT to Golang, but I don't know that we have a currently active one. I could be wrong there. So I did flag this one. And this is flow, add, or remove errors from OpenOLT adapter not propagated back to read-write core. This could maybe be put under the stabilization brigade if David agrees.
By the way,
looks like that.
Yes, go ahead. Yes.
I found that this needs fixing, but do we need this in 2.3? I mean, the impact is that if any flow fails to add or remove on the device, that is not reflected back to owners. So based on the criticality of this issue, we may choose to fix this or not for 2.3 release. I see that Chaitra has assigned this issue to herself. I'm not sure if she's working.
So you're suggesting what this means is the flow would not be on the device, but as far as the core and ONOS is aware, the flow did get provisioned.
Yes. Yeah. So basically, any errors to add or remove are not propagated back to read-write core. Yeah.
So basically, there's an inconsistent state between what we're reporting to ONOS and reality. So I think this definitely needs to get addressed.
Okay.
I put it in the stabilization brigade.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, David. I've added the stabilization tag there and leaving it in 2.3. The next one I had flagged was 2654. Let me scroll up there. This one, Amit, this one was yours. I wasn't sure where to put this in terms of if it was any brigade related to it. So add serial number of OLT and the ONU events written to Kafka. And actually, it looks like this one, is this one done? I do see a Garrett review that's closed.
It is.
Okay.
I merged it this morning, so done.
Okay. So let me move that to done.
Sorry, I forgot to.
Okay. Oh, no problem. No problem. Then the next one I had were a few. I think I just wanted some clarification so I understood what these were targeting. So 26, 59, 60, and 61. And so these, they're in the FCAPS Epic link. And I'm not sure if they were, so they're blocking a specific PM measurement JIRA issue. So I think all three are related. So it's add the proto definition, add changes in read write core, and make changes to the OpenOLT adapter. I wasn't quite sure on the context for what the changes were specifically targeting. I'm not sure if we have Dinesh on the bridge. Don't see him. Is anyone else familiar with this? With these three? I don't know if they came out of discussion during the FCAPS brigade.
I think Scott sent a message. He should be aware of it, but I'm not sure why he can't talk.
Okay.
These are
got
to
it.
add
Right,
new
thank you.
on demand.
Okay, thank you. All right, those were the only ones I'd identified as sticking out as non-brigade, and that looks like nothing else has come in. So let me go ahead and go to the non-brigade dashboard, see if anything was flagged for all discuss, and I do not see any. So I think that takes us through our agenda for today. So let me open it up. We do have about 10 minutes left. Are there any other topics that the group needs to discuss on today's meeting? All right, then I think we can go ahead and close up a few minutes early. I do want to capture a note here, make sure I have this correct for the path forward on the tech profile implementation for EPON support. So my takeaway from this was that we would keep it as a work in progress until after 2.3 branch is cut, and then it could be contributed and merged in against master. Is that the correct interpretation of the discussion?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, then I'll get that updated and send out with the minutes, and we can give everyone a few minutes back. Thanks everyone for your participation. NTT, thank you for the presentation today as well, and to everyone for the discussion, and we'll talk again soon. I will go ahead and stop the recording. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, bye.